This is the Capitol Rundown.
As you might expect, he's hurting. It's a very difficult situation for him.
We need to make sure that our property owners who are bad actors can't push off or put off our local housing authorities.
Tim, I'm not going to put a timeline on it. We've got, I think, another meeting next week on this.
So you're not going to sit on this?
No.
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Siobhan Klepfer. As always, there's a lot happening in Michigan politics from Lansing to Washington, D.C. And that's where we're starting this morning with new poll results that show a Democratic candidate with a slight edge over potential Republican challengers for Michigan's open U.S. Senate seat. In a survey, 1,000 registered voters were asked who they would vote for in 4 hypothetical races. The results are current Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin gets 41% to former Congressman Mike Rogers is 39%. She gets 42%, while businessman Sandy Pensler has 37%. Slotkin leads former Congressman Peter Meijer 42% to 34%, and tops another former Congressman Justin Amash with 43% to his 35%. But the races are still up for grabs. Between 20 and 24% of those surveyed are undecided in each race. Well, Slotkin has raised more than 10 times as much as the rest of the field, and Rogers just got the endorsement of former President Donald Trump. Numerous candidates from both parties are seeking to replace Senator Debbie Stabenow, who's retiring after 24 years in the upper chamber. Voters will pick the top Democrat and top Republican in August. Well, back in Lansing on Tuesday, a bill was introduced in the state house meant to spur nuclear power in Michigan. The bipartisan bill, among other things, defines and clarifies siting requirements for advanced nuclear reactors. The bill also sets up tax credits for designing, manufacturing, and improving reactors. And it includes funds for scholarships and workforce attraction and retention programs. 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans sponsored the bill. There are 3 nuclear power plants in Michigan. The Palisades plant in Covert went offline 2 years ago, but is expected to reopen next year. The 2 other plants are in Bridgman and Newport. And in another showing of unity, on the steps of Capitol Hill on Wednesday, lawmakers showed their collective support for Congressman Dan Kildee of Michigan. A combined group of legislators and the Michigan delegation individually held signs with messages of love and support. On Tuesday, the congressman's brother, Tim Kildee, was shot to death. The Genesee County Sheriff's Office says Tim's 27-year-old son killed him Tuesday morning. He was taken into custody after crashing a car. The county prosecutor there says he's met with Congressman Kildee and his family.
As you might expect, he's hurting. It's a very difficult situation for him and his entire family. The Kildee family is a very close-knit family, and you know, anytime there's such a tragedy, it's very, very difficult for folks to understand.
The Kildee family is well known in the Flint area. Dale Kildee, the uncle of Tim and Dan, was a member of Congress for more than 30 years. He died in 2021. Well, coming up next on the Rundown, our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic will be here with the latest from Lansing. Plus, Governor Gretchen Whitmer has a choice to make regarding the MSU Board of Trustees. That story and a lot more when the Rundown returns. Welcome back. An external review of the Michigan State University Board encouraged Governor Gretchen Whitmer to remove 2 of its trustees for alleged wrongdoing. The governor made her first public comments on the matter to our Capitol correspondent, Tim Skubic.
With faculty and student groups joining the chorus from the MSU Board of Trustees to oust Dr. Rima Vassar and Dennis Deno, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, for her part, says she is not about to rush into any quick decisions.
I take these requests seriously. There's a lot of serious ramifications from any decision here, so I've got to take my time and make sure I make the right call.
An extensive investigative report on the conduct of the 2 Democratic board members concluded that they did indeed violate several university policies. What the governor, her legal team, and the Attorney General's office have to decide is whether those alleged policy violations are severe enough to warrant state dismissal.
My legal team is doing some due diligence, and I don't have anything to announce today.
The 2 board members, for their part, voted no on the expulsion resolution adopted by the other board members during a Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago. Asked about her timeline for making a final decision on this?
Tim, I'm not going to put a timeline on it. We've got, I think, another meeting next next week on this. So.
Okay, so you're not going to sit on this?
No.
And the Rundown's Jorma Duran spoke with Tim about the governor's options for the MSU Board of Trustees and more news coming out of the state capitol.
It's time to get updated politically here in the state of Michigan, and nobody better than this guy right here, Tim Skubic, to help us out. Tim, we just heard what Governor Gretchen Whitmer told you about not putting a timeline on her decision to remove those MSU Board of Trustees members. So what action and reaction is she considering right now?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and obviously a question with grave implications for not only the two members of the MSU board, Dr. Rima Vassar and Dennis Deno, but for the university and its entire image on how it handles controversy. The governor is now knee-deep in a review, a very methodical review. What the governor's legal eagles and the Attorney General's office are huddling on, and there's another meeting on this next week, is whether what allegedly happened there rises to a state law which gives the governor to oust those two members, to remove them because they did something that was conduct unbecoming to members of the MSU Board of Trustees. And when we talked to the governor this week, she has not reached a conclusion. They are in the due diligence stage, which is they're looking at all the ramifications, and she concedes to me that this does have widespread ramifications, and she, quote, wants to take her time and get this one right. So it's in the process of review. A timeline, as you ask, maybe within the next couple of weeks, but she's not going to be held to that, because if it needs more time, trust me, she will take it.
Well, the state legislature is now working on passing an overhaul of Michigan's surrogacy laws, but there's some opposition to this. Can you tell me why?
Well, Michigan has been an outlier for years because way back when surrogacy was an issue, Michigan sort of became the hub of this national story, where there was a doctor down in Dearborn who was basically lining up parents that couldn't become pregnant on their own and connecting them with women that were willing to, for a fee, put an embryo inside of her body and then produce a baby for the couple. It became very controversial, and the legislature, as it often is wont to do, stepped in the middle and said, not in Michigan you're going to do that. And so they banned it, and that ban is at this moment still in effect. The Michigan Senate did vote, however, to eliminate the prohibition, and now it moves to the Michigan House. It is facing strong opposition from the Michigan Catholic Conference and Michigan Right to Life, who basically find it a bit disconcerting that a woman would be given money to produce a child, and they think that disadvantaged women might be pressured into doing this against their own will. And so we're going to have a very interesting debate on this. The governor has indicated she is in favor of this, and Michigan would end the ban if the House goes along and the governor signs it, but we're not there yet.
Jorma, Tim, thank you. Coming up on the Capitol Rundown, President Joe Biden's EPA announced new car emissions standards, and Michigan politicians are responding. But first, state lawmakers are looking at the relationship between landlords and tenants in Michigan, and they want some changes. We'll explain when the Rundown returns. Welcome back. Problems at an apartment complex in Lansing have drawn the attention of state lawmakers. Inspection reports on Autumn Ridge Apartments shows a complex with serious safety concerns. The city of Lansing and the complex owners are locked in a legal battle, but in the halls of the Michigan Capitol building, that's where some of these issues might be addressed. State Democratic Representatives Kara Hope and Emily Devendorf are working with other lawmakers on a 10-bill package that would, in their words, rebalance those powers between landlords and tenants. The legislation includes requiring access to attorneys for renters facing eviction and other legal housing issues, requiring both landlords and renters to sign an acknowledgement that they've reviewed their respective rights and responsibilities, and legislation that will require landlords to pay for relocations in the event a property is deemed unsafe due to a landlord's failure to act.
Level, we're looking at addressing the housing crisis from every direction, and that means not just building more housing, even though that's absolutely necessary. It means making sure that we're removing obstacles to rental housing and to owning a house, and making sure that we're saving our aging housing stock, that we are fixing up places that are currently unsafe so that they are safe and livable, but also that we're setting standards for the balance of power between landlords and tenants.
Devendorf also talked about how the bills that redefine that balance could be enforced, which Devendorf says has been an issue in the past. One way to do that is making sure inspectors can access rental homes when they need to.
We need to make sure that our property owners who are bad actors can't push off or put off our local housing authorities when they're trying to make those decisions, and aren't able to avoid the way they're operating being observed and evaluated. That may mean a number of things. Often fines are not as effective as we would like them to be, but certainly we can decide how long is really reasonable for a tenant to wait for their property to be inspected, when housing is really something that creates our stability and our ability to access so many other basic needs.
Well, moving on, the Environmental Protection Agency issued new rules on Wednesday aimed at cutting carbon emissions while also boosting electric vehicles and hybrids. Our Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson reports on who is and who is not on board with this plan.
The Environmental Protection Agency is relaxing tailpipe emission limits proposed just last year.
Gives the auto industry the flexibility to choose the combination of pollution control technologies best suited for their customers.
EPA Administrator Michael Regan says this plan will give car companies a bit more time to make adjustments. The revised standards impact newly manufactured cars and trucks for model years 2027 to 2032. Car companies say the only way they can meet the 2032 emissions limits is to switch to electric vehicles in a big way. House Speaker Mike Johnson believes the EPA rules will shift jobs to foreign car makers.
The White House is more eager to appease radical environmental activists than the American people.
And Ohio Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown says the U.S. must protect domestic auto jobs.
I just want American workers and union workers to make these cars. I don't care if they are making EVs or traditional cars.
But Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell says the White House should pump the brakes.
And I hope Washington Democrats will snap out of their climate daydream before it becomes a nightmare.
McConnell says he wants to see an increase in American oil production because most Americans still drive gas-powered cars. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson.
Shortly after the EPA's announcement, Congressman Tim Walberg of Michigan released a statement. In that statement, Walberg, who is on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, paints a bleak picture of the future of the American auto industry and Michigan's economy if the new rule takes effect. Walberg says the rule will restrict Americans' choices when buying cars, cost jobs, and link the American auto industry to China forever. Well, for the 9th straight month, Earth has obliterated global heat records, with February, the winter as a whole, and the world's oceans setting new high temperature marks, according to the European Union climate agency Copernicus. Well, coming up next here on the Capitol Rundown, TikTok is one of the biggest social media platforms and a place for people to show their creativity. But on Capitol Hill, U.S. senators are considering voting on a nationwide ban of the service. We'll tell you why when the Capitol Rundown returns. Welcome back. United States senators got a classified briefing on the dangers of TikTok Thursday. The Senate is deciding whether to vote on a House bill that would ban TikTok in the U.S. unless the Chinese owners of the company sell the business. Our Washington correspondent Basil John has details on the reactions to the briefing and the future of TikTok.
TikTok is a gun aimed at Americans' heads.
We have known for a long time that TikTok is a problem.
Senators were ticked off at TikTok after a classified briefing by U.S. intelligence and law enforcement officials on the dangers of the app.
There was deep concern about the threat from TikTok on both sides of the aisle.
Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio says TikTok poses a risk to its users and U.S. security, as long as it is owned by the Chinese company ByteDance.
Every technology company in China, under Chinese law, has to do whatever the Chinese government tells them to do.
Rubio and Virginia Democratic Senator Mark Warner lead the Senate Intelligence Committee, and they are urging the Senate to take up the House bill that would ban TikTok from U.S. app stores if ByteDance doesn't sell TikTok within 6 months.
It's about the ability to make sure that this creativity that's happening on this platform can't be manipulated by the Communist Party of China.
The Chinese government says it will not permit the sale of TikTok because it requires exporting Chinese technology. Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley says Americans are better off without the app.
We want them to have multiple other choices. We need to trust American innovation and American platforms. That's my view.
Despite the growing concern, there's been no indication as to when the Senate might vote on the bill. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
Staying with Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene on Friday filed a motion to vacate the Speaker of the House chair in the middle of a vote on a $1.2 trillion package to keep the government open. The Georgia Congresswoman has warned she would try to remove Speaker and fellow Republican Mike Johnson if he pushed ahead with a package to support Ukraine as it battles Russia's invasion. Johnson, who has refused to put a $95 billion Senate-passed national security package with Ukraine funds to a House vote, has nevertheless promised to fund Ukraine as a next priority. The House passed the budget by a vote of 286 to 134. After Friday's session, Congress was scheduled to take a 2-week spring recess. March is Reading Month, and Governor Gretchen Whitmer celebrated with some young readers. We'll tell you about her trip to Jackson and more after the break. Well, finally this morning, Governor Gretchen Whitmer celebrated March is Reading Month by visiting and reading to kids at Hunt Elementary School in Jackson on Wednesday. The governor read The Runaway Mitten.
I want to explore Michigan. I'm a little Michigan mitten, he told his mother. He thought his mother would miss him. His mother said, before you run away on an adventure, you must be prepared. After all, you are my little mitten.
The governor said she hopes their love of reading sticks with them their whole lives. Well, if you're interested in getting more political news from Michigan and Washington, we've got just the thing for you. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just one email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. This will take you to the sign up page, or you can head to WLNS.com/newsletter. And that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown.